We hear a lot about Siegfried Sassoon's influence on Wilfred Owen, but what about the part played by that other famous poet, Robert Graves? On the 14th of October 1917, Wilfred wrote to his mother, "On Saturday, I met Robert Graves, showed him my longish war piece disabled. It seems Graves was mightily impressed and considers me a kind of find. No thanks, Captain Graves, I'll find myself in due time." Graves criticized Owen for not abiding by the rules of meter, and it is true that Disabled seems loosely organized with its apparently arbitrary irregularities of stanza, meter, and rhyme. Perhaps Owen felt not unreasonably that a poet was entitled to break the rules as long as he knew them first. Drafted in October 1917 and revised at Scarborough in July the following year, Disabled presents a poignant picture of a young soldier, legless, sewn short at elbow, which sets what he had been before against what he has left it. Supremely, he once had youth, energy, virility, impelled to enlist underage. Smiling, they wrote the lie, aged 19 years, with a fine figure of which someone had once said he looked a god in kilts. With girls glancing lovelier, this young man would certainly have looked forward to a normal relationship with women. That was then. Now he is old. Now he will never feel again how slim girls' waists are, or how warm their subtle hands. Now there are only nurses who touch him like some queer disease, while as for the rest, he noticed how the women's eyes passed from him to the strong men who were whole. In the park, in his wheelchair, voices of play and pleasure after day remind him of his own former play and pleasures. Strenuous activity, football, for example, then. Now, just inactivity, but immobility. Where once he could enjoy company, respect, even hero worship, knew what it was like to be carried off the football field, shoulder high, then hear the drums and cheers when he was drafted out. What can he now expect but loneliness and neglect? Yes, some cheered him home, but not as crowds cheer goal, until finally he is left to lament. Such stark contrasts are pointed up through metaphor and symbol. The blood smeared down his leg, a badge of prowess at football, may be thought life-enhancing, whereas the loss of colour and blood poured down shell holes till veins ran dry is life-draining. The light blue trees represent a carefree past, when town used to swing so gay, while his ghastly suit of grey illustrates a joyless present. Evening time blossomed with enjoyment, when glow lamps budded, but evening now means waiting for dark, shivering, resentful of how cold and late it is. Does Owen identify with this tragic figure? Well, there are certainly autobiographical echoes in the poem. Town, meaning London, did swing gay for Owen when he first enlisted. Edinburgh's Mrs. Steinthal did paint his portrait, which Susan Owen, his mother, disliked so much she destroyed it. The British Army only had 750,000 men in August of 1914. The War Minister, Field Marshal Lord Kitchener, decided Britain would need another 500,000 men to help defeat Germany. A combination of well-designed posters and passionate recruitment speeches encouraged thousands of men to join the armed forces. By the end of August, over 300,000 men had answered the call at army recruitment centers. Many of those who had signed up were younger than the official minimum age of 19. The recruitment campaign was meant to encourage adults to sign up for the armed forces. Unfortunately, some younger citizens saw the posters and thought that it would be fun to be in the army. Others saw the army as an opportunity to travel or to get away from strict parents. Hundreds of boys falsified birth dates to meet the minimum age requirements. Desperate for soldiers, recruiting officers did not always check the boys' details very carefully. A 16-year-old later told of how he was able to join the army. The recruiting sergeant asked me my age, and when I told him, he said, "You had better go out, come in again, and tell me different." I came back, told him I was 19, and I was in. Private E. Lugg was able to join the 13th Royal Sussex Regiment at the age of 13. However, he was not the youngest soldier in the British Army. Private Lewis served at the Somme when he was only 12. John Cornwell was only 16 when he won the Victoria Cross for bravery. Cornwall was on board the Chester when it was attacked by 4 German light cruisers. Within a few minutes, the Chester received 17 hits. 30 of her crew were killed in the bombardment and another 46 were seriously wounded. Cornwall remained at his post on one of the ship's guns until the attack was over, but later died of his wounds. Victor Sylvester, a 14-year-old schoolboy, ran away from Ardingly College in 1914 to join the army. The recruiting officer accepted Victor's claim that he was 19, and soon after his 15th birthday, he was fighting on the Western Front. Victor's parents suspected he had joined the army and informed the authorities, but it was not until he was wounded in 1917 that he was discovered and brought home. On the battlefield, however, young soldiers were finding out that it was not as enjoyable as they had thought it would be. Sylvester was ordered to be a member of a firing squad that executed 5 British soldiers for desertion. People who were late in signing up for the army began to hear about the horrors of trench war. Consequently, the number of boy soldiers declined, and so it was left to adults to face the terror of the battlefield.